expanded, and essentially people who express interest in joining joined the first round of focus groups. And so out of that, we had both the technical expertise and the what are interested and involved citizens or representatives of organizations and groups. So we've kind of split out the technical folks, the county staff, as Mike talked about earlier, Michael, and are creating a technical advisory group for them. So they provide us a technical input, and then the advisory committees or advisory groups are kind of a broader representation of the community's the topical interests.
Okay, thank you for that.
Sure.
Do you have any questions? I don't have any questions. Staff?
Okay.
Is Commissioner Barrett on? No.
I don't have any questions, sir.
Great presentation as always.
Yep. Sounds great.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, sir. And we look forward to the proceeding as it goes forth. Thank you very much.
Great. Well, thank you very much. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Appreciate your time, gentlemen. Thank you. And please keep us in the loop as you move forward. So we're hearing what the Board of Supervisors are hearing. That would be
I would
greatly
just
appreciated.
mention, I would just mention one last comment. The board was interested in getting kind of more regular updates. And so while we don't have a schedule for that, we'll be checking with them fairly regular. And I think what we'll do is combine those check-ins with a check-in like this. So when every, I don't know, 3 or 4 months, maybe, we'll be back and do a quick update for you and the board on our progress.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
Much appreciated.
Sure.
Well, continuing on to item number 2, the Brown Act and the governance training session.
Thank you. Skylar Fisher, Associate Planner. Staff requests that this item be continued to a date uncertain. Originally, we were hoping County Council could give the Brown Act presentation, but we were in communication with County Council today and there was a scheduling error. It seems that they're, I think, traveling currently, so they can't give the presentation. And we haven't been able to get a date yet where they are available, which is why we recommend that we continue to a date uncertain. Hopefully, we'll be able to work it out tomorrow and get it then scheduled for the next Planning Commission meeting, but we're not sure quite yet.
Sounds great. You got a motion?
No motion.
Oh, no motion?
Nothing. Nope. Moving on to the next one.
Okay. Item number 3, amendment to the Planning Commission procedures. There are several proposed amendments to the Planning Commission procedures or bylaws, which were last updated in 1989 by Resolution PC 89-05. The intent of the proposed amendments to the bylaws is to establish more comprehensive and effective operation procedures for the Planning Commission. Planner S. Fisher.
Thank you, Chair, Commissioners. Skylar Fisher, Associate Planner. I'm going to spend the next few minutes discussing item 3, which is an amendment to the Planning Commission procedures. So to start off, as Vice Chair Heaton just stated, the last bylaws to the Planning Commission were adopted in 1989. And they were implemented to create guidelines for the Planning Commission to keep comprehensive and effective operating procedures. And in 2019, there was a draft amendment to these bylaws, which went before the Planning Commission on September 12th, 2019. But this item was continued to the October 10th, 2019 meeting. And that meeting and the subsequent October meeting were both canceled. And the project kind of disappeared after that until the February 23rd meeting of this year, where it was brought up that the Planning Commission would benefit for more modern bylaws and a reconsideration to better serve the operating procedures of the Planning Commission. So prior to these bylaws being shared and posted online, we contacted county council to review the draft bylaws that originally went in 2019. As our understanding was, there was a lot of care and effort that went into them. So we wanted to kind of stick with those bones and see if we could use those or if there were any changes that needed to happen for it to be consistent with law and just to review for county council for good practice. And there were a few amendments suggested by county council to ensure that our bylaws are consistent with the existing county ordinance discussing the planning commission. So that's Trinity County Code Section 2.36 to be consistent with other local and state law for how a hearing body should conduct itself. In addition, there were some amendments to clarify confusing language. When county council was reviewing the draft amendments, a recommendation was made to not make it amendments to the existing bylaws. So this wouldn't be an amendment to resolution PC-8905, but to instead adopt these as to replace those bylaws, which staff concurs that makes sense rather than having to go through the old and pick and choose what to change, that we just adopt something new. So to kind of go more into what has changed between the 2019 bylaws that went to the Planning Commission and the revised bylaws that are coming today, which both are attached, there was change in the language regarding frequency for how often the Planning Commission was going to meet, from twice a month in the current bylaws to once a month as proposed in the draft bylaws. Clarified language to specify the previous bylaws as being replaced, as we just discussed. Change certain language to be consistent with Trinity County Code Section 2.36. I think the most major change between the original draft and the current draft that's before you for voting is the procedures. So originally there was somewhat of unique operating procedures for how public comment was going to be conducted and how staff was going to engage on each item at the recommendation of county council to make things simpler, but to still encourage public participation and like a streamlined meeting. We instead changed the procedures to be consistent with Rosenberg's Rules of Order, which is what our Trinity County Board of Supervisors uses. In addition, language was changed to not require those providing public comment to state their name or address, because by law, we cannot require someone to state their name or address or even community. It has to be voluntary, but it is encouraged. We removed language which stated, quote, "The chair may limit the number of persons addressing the commission in order to avoid unnecessary repetition," as we are to encourage all members of the public to speak on an item, even if two members of the public say something similar, because we want to get as much public comment as possible. And changed language which stated, "Any member present who does not audibly vote shall be recorded as voting yes," to change it to voting no, to be consistent with the idea that somebody has to actively vote in order to have a yes vote for a project. And consistent with other language in the bylaws, which states that if there is a tie, so like 2 for, 2 against, and there's not a fifth planning commissioner in attendance, then that means that the project it's not an approval vote. And finally, there was just some clarifying language to portions of the original draft bylaws that were found to be confusing. Regarding potential environmental impacts of this project, project is found to be exempt from CEQA per CEQA guideline sections 15060C2 and 15061B3. And I wanted to ask, before giving a recommendation, would the chair or commissioners like me to read through the current draft of the bylaws, or you're already, okay. Just wanted to ask just in case. Okay, so with that, I recommend that staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution PC-2023-03 and Exhibit A, the rules for operation of and conduct of business before the Trinity County Planning Commission. And as an aside, I don't know if it was strictly necessary for this item, but I found it forever ago and I've always been looking for an excuse to include it in an item. As the last attachment, we have the meeting minutes for the very first Trinity County Planning Commission from September 2nd, 1943. It is in a wonderful little black book in our office.
That's awesome.
It's really cool. So I just figured I'd include it and call it out.
Very good.
I can answer any
We've
questions.
been
Thank you.
doing it for a while. Chair, if I may. I do have one question in the resolutions on 10. So resolution 10, line G. I was wondering if you could run that through for me. I'm not quite understanding how that would go down.
So I did, that's a good question. I had the same question when I was working with Deputy County Counsel on this, where I was like, is this allowed? And I was given the direction that this is legally allowed if somebody is not in attendance, but they prove that they, put in a really earnest effort to review all of the materials, then they can vote. But it is.
And I don't disagree with that. What my question is how does that vote happen? So can you play out the scenario for us? So, does the person, so I'll get to my point where I was questioning this rule is, okay, so, and with who?
I was imagining that it'd be in a scenario where like an item was continued or something to that effect, where there was like substantial discussion on it and then it was time for a vote. So interim Deputy Director Presley is pointing out the last part regarding the statement.
Mhm.
I'm just going to read it out loud to just
Sure.
kind of work through it. Okay. So Rule 10G is absence from hearing. A commissioner who was absent from all or part of a hearing may vote on the matter heard if the commissioner first reviews all evidence received during the absence, listens to the recording, or reads a transcript of the proceedings during the absence, and signs a statement that these materials have been reviewed by the commissioner prior to the vote. The statement shall be filed with the secretary prior to the affected commissioner's participation in the continued hearing or decision. Yeah, my understanding was that this was supposed to be if like an item was continued but already discussed, and then you could vote on it after when it was if it was like discussed and there was like substantial discussion, then you could still participate even if you weren't part of that original discussion, is my understanding of it. Do you have a different interpretation? Okay.
Because that makes sense in that line, because like if they're not here, it's like, how could they hear all the discussion and everything else and make a decision? So and then it's like, and then put their vote in before everything happened. It's like, so I think you're absolutely right on that, Ms. Schuyler. That makes sense to me in the way that you just described it.
So that's not how it reads. So it doesn't discern or differ whether it's a continued matter or just a hearing matter. So it is either or both. It says a commissioner who is absent from all or part of a hearing may vote on the matter heard if the commissioner first reviews all evidence received during the absence. It's not it's not making a difference of what the hearing is about or how it's ran. It's just any hearing. It could be this matter right now that we're talking about. So Rory essentially could be not here. Don't know where he's at, but he has gotten his packet. He's gotten his information. He's made a sound decision on this. At what point, according to how this reads, and this is the question, at what point would he contact your office and say, I voted yay or nay on that? Before the way I read it, he needs to do it before the next meeting. That's the way I understand it. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah, I understand that it is before there is the vote. Like if there's already a decision made, then you can't vote to change that decision, is my understanding. It has to only be voting
But how could he make that, how could you make a decision prior to the hearing? I mean, you could get the packet, because that's not how this reads, and we have to take all things into consideration here. So if I'm absent, I can't be here, but I have access to my packet, I have access to a computer where I can watch the meeting, whether it's live or recorded. I can ascertain and bring in all the collected information, and I can base a decision on that. So how does that work? I mean, can I do that? And when do I do that? Do I do it before the vote? And who do I contact? Or do I do it after the vote and just before the next meeting? The way I read this is it's just before the next meeting.
May I?
Yes. Yes.
So the way I see that reading is there's only one condition it works under, and that is prior to vote. That's the only way I see it reading.
Prior to vote?
It does.
Okay.
And because of that statement right there, the other one, those conditions don't actually
It does. Okay, you're right.
support it.
Yep, you're right. Prior to the vote, so that vote.
But
So
how would you get your vote in if you're not here to Debbie? If you're not here for that? Oh, sorry. But so it's like, how would say Rory get his vote into Debbie while we're discussing this to get his vote in for tonight?
I guess he would have taken the packet, made a decision about what he read in the packet and any information that was submitted, and based a decision solely on that without public comment or staff follow. But the staff report's here already. She's just reading it for our benefit.
Correct.
So the only added thing would be any public comment that was brought to the table that you'd be missing out on.
Again, if it's before the vote, you're assuming he's not coming to both meetings.
Right.
If it's been continued, he's probably at the next meeting and he's going to be there for voting, and he's voting even though he wasn't there, but he collected the information.
I see what you're saying.
I don't think it's a
Yeah.
problem.
No, I don't either. Nope, that clarifies it, and that makes sense. Thanks, Don.
Chair. This is the planning commission bylaws, and if you wanted to change anything, you actually could.
Okay.
So I mean, if you found that wording to be confusing and hey, this is not something we agree on and we want to go forward with and vote this in, we could entertain other language, put that language in, amend it, and then basically it's a vote, but it would be conditioned on this verbiage being changed, same as
Okay.
board of supervisor meeting. So and I definitely agree with Chairman Sharp. I mean, when you first read it, it is a little bit confusing.
Correct.
So, you know, I would just offer that if you wanted to change something, or if there was, you know, other language you wanted to use, it could be considered.
Okay. Thank you.
It does say, so it says the statement shall be filed prior, but not the vote.
Right.
So they have to, basically they're certifying that they have researched it so that they can qualify to vote. That's how I would
No, it
read
makes
that.
sense when you break it down.
Has any difficulty
No.
with that?
One question that I have in this thing is like we were talking about of changing it from, this is on a different subject, but changing it from 2 meetings a month down to 1 meeting a month. I'm not sure, but it's like with all the backlog of everything that has gone on, will that be a wise decision to change everything from 2 meetings a month to 1 meeting? Because I mean, we can always cancel a meeting.
Why don't we save this for discussion? After a motion.
Okay.
And
Okay.
So we
Okay, yeah, we'll just save that for discussion then. Thanks,
You
Bill.
would close staff comment, open public comment.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
No.
We'll close the staff comment and open up for public comment. Okay, anybody on Zoom?
John Brower.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I would encourage sticking to the 2 meetings per month. You know, considering the backlog of pending projects and the general plan update and all the cannabis stuff. It seems like it's easy enough to cancel a meeting, but we should try to stick to the longstanding schedule of 2 meetings per month. If they were able to pull it off in the 1940s and 50s and 60s and 70s and until recent times, I think we should continue that tradition. And if staff is overwhelmed and there's not sufficient items to call together a meeting, then they can merely postpone it or cancel that meeting. But I think we should at least attempt to stick to the 2 meetings per month. And the other issue of being able to vote on an item that commissioner may not have been present for, I agree that language could be tightened up to clarify that it's really a subsequent or future meeting where an item has been continued, where they may have missed being there in person for public comment or staff report or additional information. But if they've caught up on that information and they can certify so, then they should be able to participate in the vote at the same time as the rest of the commissioners are voting. I think this came up a few years ago when there was a controversial item that came up, and during the meeting, a commissioner had to leave, and that item ended up getting continued. And then at a future meeting, the item came back up for a vote, and it was controversial if that commissioner could vote on that item, even though they hadn't heard the entirety of the staff report and public comment. So maybe if you just insert some additional clarity, that the intent is to provide for a commissioner to certify they've received the same information as the other commissioners prior to a vote, might help straighten that out.
Thank you, John. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else on Zoom?
Marie, go ahead.
Hi, Marie Peterson, District 1. The projects that are vetted by the Planning Commission are drivers and creation of jobs, infrastructure, and opportunities for prosperity in our communities. Rule 1 attachment 2 is like almost fighting against that. We really need to keep the meeting twice a month. We've had a backlog of 40 or more projects. I'm not even sure why this would be suggested as a permanent rule change. It seems like it would be a way to keep our community down and continue to perpetuate poverty here. During this time of economic decline and uncertainty, the worst thing that our leaders can do is work 50% less. The impacts, for example, something that we're looking at right now is changing of the cannabis ordinances. With meetings going only once a month, that wasn't heard this month. The soonest that our Planning Commission might hear that would be next month, which would take it to the board the month after. And then those rules might go into effect in June at the earliest, end of June or later. Right now, people who need variances on a cannabis project even people who've paid for those variances are not able to get hearings in front of the Planning Commission because of this proposed rule change. So this is going to cause people who've already suffered at the hands of poor decision making of our county. Now they'll be looking at possibly missing another season because of only one meeting a month. And this will continue to impact our community in a negative way in many more projects, not just cannabis. So I really, really urge you guys to do the right thing for our community and for our future, and keep the meetings twice a month, or even change the language to say as needed based on the number of agenda items or projects ready to be heard. Thank you for hearing my opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Marie.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, we'll close public comment and open up for discussion amongst the commission. I personally am like John was specifying that it's like, I think
Let's go ahead
personally,
and make a motion.
oh, okay.
So I'll make a motion for discussion that we adopt resolution PC 2023-03 and exhibit A, rules for operation of conduct of business for the Trinity County Planning Commission. Can you do something about the? Second.
Second it.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, did somebody second? I didn't hear it.
Oh, yes.
Dawn, second it.
Thank you.
All right.
Any thoughts?
I'm clear on Rule 10, line G. I just needed clarity to hear it from somebody else because reading it, I wasn't clear a bit. I think it makes total sense once you read it out and talk it out. So I don't feel we need to amend that or add verbiage to it. I think it's a teachable paragraph that if somebody is confused, it can get clarity fairly quickly and easily. So I don't think it needs to go back for rewrite on that. I do hear the people talking, about going from one meeting to two meetings. If this was a year ago, 2 years ago, I would agree. But for the last 3-4 months, it's been a pretty light load. And I'm not saying that that won't change, but I am assuming that once cannabis, which it seems to be, gets ironed out, that the workload here should significantly shrink back to normal planning agendized items. Cannabis does not consume most planning commissions, time wave like it does here. So once licenses are all issued, which I think we're quickly getting there, I think the load is going to drop significantly on us anyway, because the rules are out there, the laws are out there. People just need to follow them, and that's out of our purview. Do we need 2 a month? At this point, I know we don't, because we hardly filled tonight. If I wouldn't have made this motion for this, we wouldn't have had anything on the agenda for tonight, and it's been 6 weeks since we met. So it's not a real argument that we're not meeting the needs of our community or county by holding one meeting, because that's what we've been doing. And I don't know, is there still a backlog on your end, Ms. Fisher? As far as stuff that we haven't heard that.
So there's still a backlog, but most projects still need staff time.
Right. So creating another meeting, does that help or hurt you for staff time and getting projects to us?
The nice thing about how the bylaws are worded is that there is at least one planning commission meeting a month. So if we have a really good month and we get a few projects that are ready for the planning commission, we can see availability and schedule a second planning commission meeting for that month. So it does allow us that flexibility.
Okay. And I like that. I think it frees commissioners up to have a life a little bit, and maybe gives planning a better opportunity to get things done instead of holding meetings. I do not want to slow the process for anybody, no matter what their project is. I don't care. They have a right to be heard and to be through the process quickly. But meetings don't necessarily do that. It takes time to get projects to the table, and it takes man hours. And if they're planning meetings, then they're not doing their jobs. Yep. And if we do have enough material to be heard, as a commissioner, I'm totally willing to meet twice a month if they give us an email and say, hey, we've got a big load this month, let's plan on 2 this month. I'm totally okay with that. I don't know about you guys.
I'm actually good with that. For that. I'm good with that is because I was just concerned that it was like, I didn't want to go from where we're two meetings down to 1. And then if we limit that, then we wouldn't, it would limit us from hearing more if we had the busy load. So, but under the circumstances of how you described it, I'm good with that, Bill.
I am too. I think the verbiage allows for it. I think it's written well. I like the idea of replacing the old one with a new document, not just amending it. It is good to start fresh, have some kind of a template for new planning commissioners to work off of that's relevant to today and what we're all reading. So, I would encourage everybody to take this home and read it, practice it, so you know how the meetings are ran and what we should and shouldn't be doing, and reading the Rosenberg's Rule of Law to make sure that we're all up to date on what we're supposed to be doing.
Because we've been operating under Robert's Rule of Law.
Robert's Rule of Law.
Yes, and so this is transferring us over to, I'd never even heard of Rosenberg.
You are correct. It is Robert's Rule.
Yeah, but okay, but that sounds good. Did you have any more thoughts, Mr. Don?
No, I like the solution of having the flexibility. I think personally, having a once a month meeting gives me more focus to do what I'm doing when I'm here than thinking about the things I'm not doing that run my everyday life usually. So I would rather be on call when necessary than be here when not necessary.
Good. Well said. Well, shall we bring this to a vote?
Commissioner Ellis, how do you vote?
Yay.
Commissioner Sharp, how do you vote?
Aye.
And Commissioner Vice Chair Heaton, how do you vote?
Aye.
Thank you. 3-0 to adopt Resolution PC 2023-03 and Exhibit A, Rules of Operation of and Conduct of Business before the Trinity County Planning Commission.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Well, do we have any planning commissioner reports?
I do. This is actually a meeting that was held not last month, but the month before, I believe in December. And it's just something I did not report on last month and I should have. We had a ARC meeting, that's Architectural Review Committee meeting for District 2. That covers the historic district for Weaverville. I chair that commission. The reason we held the meeting was to approve trash can replacement for downtown Weaverville here. The Rotary Club built and supplied the first trash cans that have been out, which were wine barrels. They've gotten dilapidated and we're needing replacement. So the Rotary bought another design to the table. It's a steel trash can with both recyclables and trash sides to them. They're steel, they're enclosed, they're kind of bear-proof, people-proof kind of enclosures. So we approved a design and a color, and so they'll be installing new trash enclosures down Main Street through Weaverville, I think 9 different locations. So that was why the meeting was held. During that meeting, one of the things that was brought up was the old Trinity Market and the viability of that building and the risk it involves to this community. So that discussion was held.
Where is that?
So the old Trinity Market is the green building next to the movie theater. It's on the, if you're facing the movie theater, it's the left side.
Okay.
It's abandoned. It used to be the Trinity Market when I was a kid and was a grocery store. It's been other things since. It's owned by an individual now that I think at one point they were going to try to turn it into part of their winery business, and that just never came through. I know the building's been gutted, both foundation and interior, so it's a shell, and it was discussed during that meeting that, you know, the bottom line is it's a blight on our community at this point. There's been nothing done with it. The doors, even today as I went by, were left open. We've had multiple issues with fires in abandoned buildings in our community, in our commercial buildings. And this one looks prime for a problem. And it was something that I brought up with staff. I think Ms. Fisher was at this meeting as well. And at that meeting, we directed staff to look into contacting the owner of the building, trying to get them to move on either doing something with the building, selling it, and if there was no movement there, then the county look into eminent domain and tearing it down. At this basis, if a fire started in there, it could easily go all the way through downtown with the right situation. And that is something none of us want to see happen.
No.
So, you know, I'm bringing it up on this meeting, I think mainly to let you guys know and to get staff's movement on this to see if we can push this ball up the hill and get some movement on that. So if you guys have any questions for me on it, feel free. But that was our ARC meeting for December, which is the first time it's been held since I've been a commissioner. So I think it'd been 3 years or something like that since they got together.
Wow.
So some of these meetings are starting to reconvene, which is good. I mean, like we kind of talked about a minute ago, the workload here has been pretty heavy. And I think a lot of things got put by the wayside. So some of these other, you know, community plans and commissions that are held, you know, I know there's another one that we're supposed to be doing that we aren't, which is the subdivision review committee, which is something we probably need to think on, you know, here this year, getting back on track and seeing how to best facilitate that through us in planning without creating a problem for planning.
Yeah.
You know, but it's certainly something that needs to be addressed, as well as many other things. But I do feel like we're on the right trajectory. I mean, since I've been sitting in this chair, things have changed dramatically in the positive. I mean, I feel like this is a working unit, and that's not something I experienced when I first came. So that's off to planning department. Good job.
Good.
Yeah.
Mr. Don, did you have anything? Mine's not necessarily a report, but more of a question for staff. Is I've been continuing, because I think I talked with Miss Debbie last meeting about the limited dwelling, our K-housing ordinance that we had, the limited dwelling ordinance. And I have people continually asking me where we stand on that because of they're ready to apply over there in my neck of the woods. And it was like, and they're chomping at the bit. And I was like, well, I haven't heard anything. And so I was just kind of curious on staff of where we stand on that.
Thank you. So we reached out to the Building Standards Board because it's our understanding that they were the body that was supposed to review and approve the ordinance. The ordinance was then routed to the California Department of Housing and Community Development, in which they said that it should take a few weeks to review. That was about a month or so ago. We followed up with them either this week or last week to get an update to see if there were any issues or anything like that. We got a response that said that they're just still reviewing it. So as soon as we know and we get the sign off, or if we get any comments, we will definitely report back here.
Okay, I greatly appreciate that because like I said, I have multiple people who've been asking me about that, personal friends, in fact, who they're holding off because they're like, they're chomping at the bit to get going. So it's still in review. Beautiful. Thank you. That's the only thing I have. Staff, do y'all have anything to report?
How's it going, sir? So, you know, and I will try not to be dramatic on this point, but this is something that needs to be met as a matter of record. Tonight is the last night for Associate Planner Skylar Fisher. This is her last Planning Commission meeting. She resigned on the 2nd, effective on the 30th of March. And so I don't really know what else to say about Skylar. I think everything is, it's kind of been said in the last 10 months I've been here, that I've seen a lot of things in my time. I've seen a lot of I've seen a lot of really, really good people in my 24 years in the military all over the world. And you know what? She is one of those that no matter where she goes, she's going to be a star. She's going to be the light in the room. And I just really appreciate everything that she's done for the planning department, for the division since she's been here. I don't know if there wants to be some discussion or we can close the meeting and afterwards we can talk, but that's the state of affairs in the planning division right now. There's an associate planner job that just got flown yesterday, and hopefully we will get some more funding to get a senior planner on the books here in the coming months, but there's nothing in the
Wow.
stars right now.
Wow.
So
Ms. Schuyler, I'm very sad to see you go. You've been awesome.
Thank you. This is very bittersweet for me. I've really enjoyed my time here at the county, but I've realized it's time for me to explore other opportunities. I want to thank you all for your work here on the commission, all of the hard questions that you've given me, all the thoughtful discussions, all the projects that we've been able to push forward. It's been a truly fantastic experience. Yeah, just thank you so much.
Wow. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fisher. I just want to congratulate you to whatever endeavor you're headed to. And I just want to recognize just the amount of growth and professionalism that I've seen and watched you do since you stepped into this role. It's pretty amazing. So I'm sure you're going to do well wherever you go. And thank you. And do we have a plan for a planner?
All we know right now is we're flying the position. I guess we'll see what happens. I think the first window is 2 weeks. So hopefully after 2 weeks, we'll have some applicants come in and we can interview, and well, it's kind of just a waiting game and hopefully seeing that we get some good applicants come in.
And when is your last day?
My last day is next Thursday.
Okay.
Wow.
Gotcha. Okay. So
That's-
thank you again. I appreciate that. If I may,
Yeah.
Chair. So Director, what does that do for the workload there? How is that going to negatively impact us as far as hearing stuff?
I think everybody here already knows the answer to that question.
Well, I'm going to need you to say it.
So, well, I'll say it. So Mitchell is the assistant planner and we're flying a position currently, and hopefully we'll be able to get a senior planner in here within the next few months. So if you know any planners, send them my way. Tell them to go to trinitycounty.org and apply. So as far as slowdowns, it's going to be whatever Mitchell can handle as far as workload to get going and bring before the commission. So that's where we're at.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you guys, all of you. I'm sure you guys all know we appreciate your hard work. You know, it's not an easy job,
Wow.
obviously.
Does anybody else have anything to say?
Nope.
Well, how about we make a motion to adjourn our meeting?
I motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
Meeting adjourned.